have a lot to process after that long of a race.
There was a lot to process.
We're Sid and Mackie, and we're professional mountain bikers on a quest to race the best and most challenging mountain bike races around the world. A few weeks ago, we returned from our biggest and by far most exhausting adventure of the year, Madeira, a 5-day enduro stage race. Not only was this race incredibly physically difficult, we had very little time to think about what we had accomplished once it was over. Within minutes of finishing the race, we were packing our bikes and preparing to get on a flight back home. And for a few weeks afterwards, we were too tired to process what we had been through. Now, however, it's time to start getting back to our routines, reflect on this race, and start to think about what comes next.
Why did that happen? How did that happen? How can I race in the future more consistently?
To be honest, I think you were off your game from that moment on. After racing Madeira, we immediately took a pretty extended break from any kind of training. That said, we are making an effort to stay consistent with the gym work. Even if we're doing just short gym workouts, we find that even if it's not a hard gym workout, even if it's not heavy, just keeping that mobility piece in there, keeping a little bit of strength work is huge for when we do start our off-season training, having more energy, being a little more resilient. That's what we're gonna do now, is get a little gym workout in. I wanted to take a second in this video to share our little post-race analysis from Madeira.
You have a lot to process after that long of a race, like that big of a race. You're just like, ooh,
that
okay,
race especially,
a lot
just like
happened.
There was a lot to process.
Well, in 30 stages, that's a lot of stages.
5 days, 40 hours.
On the bike.
We often get comments, not often, but every now and then someone's like, I wanted more post-race analysis. And I think the reality is the reason we don't always do a ton of post-race analysis in our race videos is our post-race analysis, like day of, is usually pretty banal. Like,
it's, oh my gosh, we're done with the race. Quick, pack the bikes and get on an airplane.
Yeah, like, I'm fine. I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm sad.
There's not a lot of nuance.
There's not very much nuance.
Yeah.
It kind of comes on you later. First off, I am really, really happy with the result that I had in Madeira. I think a lot of people might focus on the fact that I was winning until the last day. Reality is a little more complicated than that. The woman I was racing with, Kaisa from Finland, she had a really bad crash the first day and then sort of steadily gained on me after that. That said, it was really, really fun racing with her because we were so close on so many of the stages.
The two of them, they just like, Sid would win some, Kaisa would win some, and they were just going back and forth the whole time. It was really neat. Looking at the results, there were times where their difference on the stage was 0.1 of a second.
Neither of us was feeling super competitive about the result. And I think we were both just like, this is really cool to have someone who's going the same speed, who's like pushing you. Like every time I made a mistake, like she would gain on me and vice versa. I'm sure like some people would be like, oh, if you hadn't dropped the GoPro, you would have won the race. That is technically true if you do the math. The thing is, a race like that, stuff happens to everybody all the time. Kaisa definitely did not have a clean race. I did not have a clean race. Other than that, I didn't personally find it worth dwelling on the fact like, oh, if this hadn't happened or that hadn't happened, I would have been 16 seconds faster, because I think that was true for her as well. Like there was stuff that happened.
Totally.
So
I think the thing that you did really well, and I think we should all give Sid a round of applause for this, is she was extremely consistent.
yeah.
Like you basically had one sort of crash, which was when you bumped the GoPro and then it fell off.
Yeah.
And then you had one actual crash the entire race.
And the actual crash actually, when I looked at the footage, like cost me almost nothing. Like I got up so fast.
I'm not even talking about time though. I'm just talking
Yeah.
about like riding strong, consistently within your limits, but fast. Like
Yeah.
that is what we all want to do.
Big shift for me from how I've looked at enduro before. Like I was very nervous going into this race. I didn't actually want to do it a lot of the time because I just have had bad experiences racing enduro. I've often felt like really outclassed, really slow, like the worst bike rider in the universe when I raced enduro. And this race I did kind of go into with the mentality of like, I'm gonna just be safe and ride within my limits. And in the past when I had done that, like the results would be pretty bad. And this time I did that and was second and first on about half of the stages. It shows the skills have progressed to a point where I can just sort of do my own thing and do well.
I'm just gonna say, I told you so. I just had to say it.
had to do that,
I
didn't you?
I had to say it because
That was
I
such
did.
a nice moment. I thought you were gonna be like, I'm just gonna say I'm so proud of
I already
you.
said that.
I'm
I already
so
said how
happy for
proud I
you.
was.
No,
No.
I told you so. Classic.
I did have to say I told you so because I did predict that before this race.
Yeah,
So,
you did. That's
yeah.
true.
I, on the other hand, did not ride consistently. It was so frustrating because I normally do. Like that's something I pride myself on, is being like super consistent, super safe. I don't know if it was just the fact that it was wet and I didn't have enough practice in that, or if it was that I got too excited or
I
what.
think
But
it's easy to kind of blame the wet because we are not used to that and we are not as fast in the wet, but neither of your crashes were caused by it being wet.
I don't know.
You might have ridden out the second one if it had been dry. Yeah. Well, okay, if it had been dry, you wouldn't have hesitated. So that's probably...
If it had been
But-
dry, I might have still gotten away with the line I took. But it was just a stupid line. Like, I basically have no excuses. I have been trying to figure out, like, why did that happen? How did that happen? How can I race in the future more consistently, more safely, while still going just as fast?
Like, there is an element of luck in races
Always.
like this, too. Like, I don't feel from looking at the footage that either of your crashes were like, wow, you were riding way outside of your limits.
That's
I think
true.
the first one you clipped a pedal.
Yeah,
Like, it
yeah.
happens to everybody. To be honest, I think you were off your game from that moment on.
Yeah,
and I don't know
I
if
think so too.
you hit your head. Like, he didn't have any concussion symptoms. If he had concussion symptoms, he wouldn't have kept racing. But sometimes these things can be really subtle and you don't really know until you look back later and are like, why did I keep making mistakes?
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
In hindsight, the hindsight 2020 thing, I probably should have. I don't know.
I don't know.
Check. I think we're good. Ooh.
It may not have been a concussion situation at all. I think you may have just,
It scared me.
yeah.
I hit the ground real hard that first day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of a scary crash. And it definitely scared me. And like second day, between the crash and the shock, I did not feel like I was on it that second day. And then the third day I started being like, okay, like I feel like I'm racing well again. And I think the results sort of showed that.
Just to talk gear choice a little bit, because that's really important. We had this grand plan of filming a bike check on the beach in Madeira, which obviously didn't happen because our bikes showed up like 20 minutes before the race.
And then when we kept being like, okay, we'll do it during the race, there was just no time. Well, they were covered in mud and there was no time. We'd like get up early in the morning, eat breakfast, get on the shuttle, be on the bikes all day, get back to the campsite at 5, 6 p.m., wash bikes, eat dinner, go to sleep.
It's really hard to describe how kind of hectic and busy these enduro stage races are. It's very different from a cross-country stage race. The point kind of being is that we didn't do a great job in the videos of talking about the gear we were using. We definitely had some questions that made us realize people did not realize what bikes we were on. We both rode the 9er WFOs, which are 170, 180 bikes.
Big.
That was definitely the right call for this race. Like,
awesome.
While there were many of the trails that we both could have ridden on a smaller trail bike, with that many stages, you just want as much margin of error as you can have, and you want as much comfort as you can have.
And I think racing blind is the other component. All those trails, had we known them, a smaller bike might have been faster, but not knowing the trails, when you're like coming into things and it's blind, that extra 30, 40, 50 millimeters of suspension.
Slightly slacker head angle, like
slacker
stuff
head
like
angle.
that makes a big difference.
Yeah, it saves you. It's your babysitter. I remember somebody saying once, save you when you make a stupid mistake.
And you make more stupid mistakes when you're racing blind.
Nice. Saved it.
I was super happy with the bike. I was really happy with our tire choice, which we did talk about in one of the videos. We went with Assegai DHR. So Assegai in the front, DHR in the rear.
Both of them, double down casing, max grip compound.
Really happy with that. Never got clumped up in the mud. It was definitely not that kind of mud. It was more slippery.
So what about equipment choices that did not work?
Obviously, your shock blew, which happens. Everything breaks. That said, the spare was one that we had rebuilt by Fox. I think it would have been smart to keep the one that we knew had the older internals as the spare and put the rebuilt one on. But hindsight 2020.
Hindsight
again,
2020.
I would change the way that we packed for this race a little bit.
Okay.
We kind of had everything in like one bag because we transferred stuff over.
What we've talked about, which would have been really nice, is each day's kit in its own like gallon Ziploc bag. So you could just like pull out kit, place.
And then also have some plastic bags when everything was dirty.
Yeah, we could then put those back in the bags afterwards when they were soaking wet.
We did bring a dirty clothes bag, which was a good call. Definitely do that. I just think might in the future bring like a plastic garbage bag as the dirty clothes bag. Basically everything that got wet never dried. We weren't totally prepared for that. I would say we had the right kit. I wasn't necessarily expecting having to find everything in the dark every morning. Not a huge deal, but just like things that we learn.
We did a good job of bringing the right clothing.
Yeah.
We did a bad job of making it easy to find in our bag. We should have brought powerful headlamps for the tunnels.
Oh my God, I hate this. I should not have gone first. The tunnels definitely took me by surprise. Just the length of them, the fact that we were balancing on the edge of a thing.
Yeah,
like that's what I wasn't expecting because they did tell us there were tunnels that you should have lights. But I was kind of thinking you're just walking your bike through a tunnel.
No big deal.
Like you don't need to see the details of every rock. You do. If you go to Madeira, bring real headlamps.
Do you feel like you lived an entire additional lifetime in a tunnel? Because that's kind of how it feels to me.
In terms of things with our performance that could have gone better.
I mean, if I hadn't crashed, that would have been great.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the long hours on the bike and like feeling fresh on the later days.
I definitely feel like we were physically prepared for it.
Yep.
For sure. Definitely got a little like hand fatigue on the last couple days. I think I actually got almost more like mental fatigue on the last couple days than physical fatigue because I'm just so much more fit than I've ever been when I did a stage race like this before, that my body was really doing great, but I was having trouble. Like I kind of feel myself having trouble making decisions. I think that is just a factor of like not having done that much enduro racing this year.
I think we were having trouble making decisions and stuff on the last day of BC bike race. Last
Totally.
day, like
Yeah.
5, 6, 7 days into a stage race, You're just tired.
One thing for me, like it would have been really nice if I felt more confident hitting 8 to 10 foot gap jump blind.
Yeah.
That was like an element that was a little frustrating for me, is I definitely went around things, and then as I was going around them, I was like, definitely could have hit that. There was one section on the last stage, second to last stage, I think, where there was this gap jump over a fence. At the time, I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't do that. That was terrifying. But then I watched the footage, and not only did I slow down to go around it, I then like jumped over the thing that had a roll and cleared it by like 2 feet. So if I hadn't slowed down, like I definitely would have cleared the other one. I don't know if that's something that I'm ever going to improve, because the reality is there definitely were some jumps on there that I didn't have the speed for. And I think just the not knowing.
That's the difficulty of racing blind.
Right. That's what riding conservatively is going around things when you can't see the other side. I do think there were some that I could see and I still didn't have the confidence for it. And that's like where there's room for
That's what you want to work on.
Yeah.
All in all, I think you did an amazing job.
Thank you.
Good job.
That wasn't better. All in all, I told you so.
All in all, I told you so, but good job.
I just want to say I'm very proud of Mackie for making the call to stop racing on the last day. Like at the time, we didn't know his rib was broken. It was a hard decision because you could have gotten back up and kept racing, but you don't want to mess with a broken rib. And I think it's maturity to know when to call it. It was fun to get to ride with you the rest of that day. So
that was really fun.
Yeah, that's it. That's the post-race analysis.
So what's next for us? Well, we still have a few more races left in 2023 to share with all of you. But our focus is a little different for these events. Instead of peak performance, we'll be looking for fun and community and filling up that cup before we start our 2024 training in earnest. This is one of the best times of the year. We can ride with friends and family, enjoy the fall weather, and, well, maybe tackle a dumb adventure or two.
I was just saying to Bo that this is starting to feel more like an adventure than a dumb way to die.
Stay tuned for that one. And before we know it, we start feeling that itch to bury ourselves in the training once again and see how good we can be. And until next week, don't forget to be more awesome.